are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Suns Show.
Good morning and welcome to another Suns Solar Panel. Welcome to the show. Thank you all for joining us. And, Zona, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing today?
Not bad. First team to 30 wins. It's been a fun season, and still getting through it even with all the COVID issues. Seems like they went through their rough patch. Hopefully this is as rough as it gets. Yeah, excited for tonight's game.
Well, it's pretty amazing that that last year the Suns didn't have hardly any injuries. This year they've missed DeAndre Ayton for a third of their games. They missed Devin Booker for 6 of their games. They've missed Jay Crowder for half a dozen games and JaVale McGee, and they've had a lot of guys in and out, and yet they've still managed to get the most wins in the league, and they're all complementing the system, the culture that Monty Williams has set up with the Suns, so that guys like Bismack Biyombo can suddenly come in easily. He knows a very simple role, and he can play it to a high ability, even though he hasn't been with the team all year. Justin Jackson signed off the street, didn't get signed by anybody this past year, kind of played himself out of the league, being a one-dimensional shooter who can't shoot. Comes in, makes it 2 out of 3 threes in his second game with the team. So the Suns, it's pretty fun watching them. The one guy that has been entirely consistent in here every game is Chris Paul.
It's pretty unreal.
Yeah, exactly. It's been pretty unreal. The guy who's almost 37 years old, will be by the time the playoffs start, is all of a sudden he's the stalwart on the team who never misses any time. I want to say good morning to those folks in the chat, those folks who are watching right now. Thank you for joining us for Solar Panel. Fallen Founder, I see you making a comment. Good morning. Richard Slow, good morning. I know others will join. It's early. We get it on a Saturday morning. This is mostly for watching later. Totally understand. Thank you so much for joining us, because you guys get to be part of a huge show. Today, we're going to talk trade deadline. Everyone wants to talk transactions. We're going to take all of your questions and all of your comments from the chat. I promise, I don't guarantee that I will like everything you guys suggest in the chat. And I will be honest and open, but hopefully respectful about what you guys suggest the Suns go get in the chat. We'll be doing research on the suggestions as they come up. Zona and I will both be trying to stay on top of, okay, what if we're talking about acquiring a guy, what is that guy's salary? How could he fit? We're going to start by talking about the Suns' assets before we talk about who the Suns can acquire, to make sure everybody's on the same page of what the Suns can send out and should send out. But before we get into all that, we're just going to recap the week. This is Saturday morning, January 8th of 2022. The trade deadline is 5-6 weeks away, and the All-Star game is only 4 weeks away. And the first results from All-Star balloting came out. Devin Booker and Chris Paul are in the list of the top 5, top 10 guards in the West. What do you think about how the Booker and Paul rank in the West voting, Zona?
So I think that's about what I expected them, more or less, to finish, somewhere in that 4 to 6 range. But can we just stop fan voting forever? Just ban it. It's ridiculous. I mean, you have.
Is there anyone in particular you're thinking about when you say that, Zona?
There's a list. I mean, there's LaMarcus Aldridge is on the list. You have Carmelo Anthony, Derrick Rose, and then obviously the Warriors guys. Andrew Wiggins is 4th in the front court. Get out of here. I mean, Klay Thompson hasn't played in 2 years. He's in front of Booker. It's just
hasn't played in 2 years, and will have barely played a month of games.
I can't remember who tweeted it this morning, but I saw something. Last time Klay Thompson played in a game, Josh Jackson was on the Suns. So just to put things in perspective. But yeah, I think
we have another Jay Jackson on the Suns. So, comes full circle.
True. But yeah, I think, enough with that. We don't need, we already have enough fan discussions on Twitter. We kind of see how ridiculous some of the fans can get. So we're going to rely on those guys to to pick the starters. I just think it should just be coaches and players that settle that. But anyways, that's Ayton finished 10th in front court, which is it's nice to see him on that list. Because I thought fan vote would be one area he might lag behind a little bit. But yeah, overall, just ban the fan vote, please.
Well, what's interesting is as you say, ban the fan vote. Suns fans have been hanging their hats on the potential of Kendall Jenner having a tsunami of votes in Devin Booker's favor, and yet she finally did tweet yesterday. Every vote counts double. Yesterday, every vote for All-Star counts double, and she did tweet yesterday to vote for Devin Booker, that she wants Devin Booker in the All-Star game, and she used the proper hashtags. By the way, if you're going to use Twitter and you're going to try to do a vote online, you can. The NBA will count it, but you have to do the right format. And for some reason, in the last couple of weeks, they took out the @ being the right format, probably because players were complaining that they were getting added so much they didn't see any of their real tweets that they wanted to respond to, because you know how players are so engaging with fans. So it's got replaced there where you got to hashtag a player name and you have to hashtag NBA All-Star. She did all that proper. She has how many followers does she have, Zona?
A lot. I think, what is it, like 30 million or something?
31 million followers. You're thinking, God, hey, the most votes anyone has is about 1 million at this point. If she gets her 31 million in there, Devin Booker is a surefire All-Star, and that's fan voting. So I don't want to give up fan voting for that reason. And yet, how many retweets did she get? Because you have to do a retweet to get credit.
Let's check right now. I think last time I checked it was around 10K.
That's it. 31 million followers and only 10,000 retweets.
To be fair, she's tweeting to a crowd that is not. It would be like us tweeting about, or like me tweeting about something non-basketball related to my followers, because it's not like all of her fans are like diehard NBA fans. But yeah, 11,000 retweets and votes count as double when she tweeted yesterday. So I guess that's 22,000. So it does make a dent, but I would have expected more at least.
Yeah, that's
30 million.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. All right, the sun coming in through this window here is driving me crazy. So I'm going to go close my shades real quick. So take over the show real quick, Zona. I'll be right back.
Gotcha. Yeah. So to your point earlier, just about the culture they've installed here, I think that should make Suns fans excited for this trade deadline, just because of how seamless a lot of these like free agents have fit. Bismack and like Dave pointed out earlier, even Justin Jackson looked playable. So adding an actual NBA rotation player, I think they're going to look that much better. So we're going to get into some names here in a little bit. Yeah, overall, the trade market, I think one point I wanted to hit on was the play-in game is going to make a lot of teams kind of hesitant to enter the trade market because they think they have a shot at the playoffs. I think the trade deadline in general might be a little bit slower than usual this year because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing that. So you were talking about the play-in game as far as fewer sellers. Are we moved on to the trade deadline talk? Is that what we're going to start doing?
Yeah, I think we covered the recap for the most part. We should also hit on Bismack did sign for the rest of the year. That's official now. And
all at the same time, Frank Kaminsky went under the knife. So Frank Kaminsky had surgery this week on his knee. It was not healing, the stress reaction in his knee. That's really too bad because he was having the best stretch of his career. And I guess he outplayed his body. So he had surgery on the knee. He's going to be relooked at. He's only going to get reevaluated in 8 weeks. That doesn't even include ramp up time back to basketball and all that. So he might be ready by playoffs and able to come off the bench. But right now the Suns have a 3 deep on center with DeAndre Ayton is returning on Saturday night to active duty. So is JaVale McGee. They're both going to be in the lineup, and Bismack Biyombo will be that third center now because Frank and Dario are both injured, and Jalen Smith, as wonderful as he's been for the past week and a half, is not going to get minutes. Certainly, he's not going to get minutes ahead of DeAndre Ayton and JaVale McGee. We can talk about Jalen Smith, what Monty said about Jalen Smith going forward, but it has not been with him as a center, which is unfortunate because that's where he best fits. So, Zona, let's talk about a little, excuse me, the depth chart on the Suns, because I think people need to get a better sense. And I'm going to do some fun thing where I'm going to try to share a screen. So why don't you talk about, while I'm setting this up, Zona, why don't you talk about what you think? Do you think the Suns should make a trade?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're trying to win a championship, you need almost a perfect roster that can withstand, not only one injury, but maybe an injury to two key players. And even if like COVID pops up during the playoffs, you're going to need that depth. So I think they're on the right track right now. Adding someone like Bismack helps while Frank is out, and they still have some clear needs though. And I think you kind of see guys like Elfrid Payton, Abdel Nader, and a lot of their two-way guys that they have, like there's still a lot of room for improvement. So I think anytime you can get better and you're trying to win a championship, you have to. So I think we're definitely going to see James Jones at least make one trade, and also be very active on the buyout market. That there's a reason they left an open roster spot, and they could also apply for, hardship for Dario. Right. Yeah, injury exception for Dario. So there's a lot of flexibility.
They did use that last roster spot on Bismack, so they don't have that anymore. We don't know what they signed him for, but the assumption is the league minimum. They've got a couple million they could offer a buyout player, but they no longer have a roster spot. So let's talk through the Suns depth chart right now. I'm sharing this. You've got a point guard. You've got Chris Paul and Cameron Payne and Elfrid Payton. At shooting guard, Devin Booker and Landry Shamet. Small forward and swing forward, really, because they're really interchangeable forwards. You've really only got, as far as full contributors that you would trust in a playoff series for good minutes, be Mikal, Cameron Johnson, and Jay Crowder. And then at center, you've got a ton of depth. And the Suns, they're not going to get caught short at center anymore. That's one thing that James Jones has decided. I'm not going to get caught short at center. In the playoffs last year, they had a kind of a wishy-washy up and down. Dario, he had some good games, but some not so effective games in the playoffs last year for the Suns. Frank Monty didn't trust him enough to play him very much, so he didn't play a ton. So you've got basically DeAndre Ayton at center getting most of the center minutes, almost all the center minutes. And then by the finals, he had to do all the center minutes. So, Darth, don't make me do this, Darth. Come on, man. Darth put a comment in the chat. DA at the 4. Please. Okay, let's talk about the Suns' scheme here, first of all. So there's their depth chart. Okay, let's talk about the Suns' scheme. The Suns' scheme is not old school 2 big men play at once. They both cover the paint, and everyone else just has to create their own shots. That's not the Suns' scheme. If you've been watching the Suns for the past 2 years, they don't play 2 bigs at once unless they have to. And when you have to, that means you're playing to the other team. You're not playing your own game. The Suns are 30-8. They have the best record in the entire league playing this scheme. Go beyond this year. They have the most wins in the NBA since July of 2020. Most wins in the NBA in almost 2 years playing the scheme that they're playing. Please don't suggest that the Suns are going to play 2 bigs. Good Lord. Just because DA likes to shoot a mid-range, which he has hardly shot this year. I think people also old habits, old beliefs. Your beliefs about a player die hard, apparently. DA's hardly taken any shots outside the paint this year. 90% of his shots are in the paint. So you're going to put in another big man next to him? No. DA is going to get the minutes in the paint, and if he's not playing, then it's going to be JaVale or Bismack. That's it. Around them are going to be mobile forwards who can stretch the floor, who can shoot, and they can switch. The Suns switch like crazy. They can switch. They can defend. They can defend smalls. They can defend bigs. They can do all kinds of things. They're jacks of all trades. And then you've got Chris Paul and Devin Booker there running the show in the backcourt. They're just not going to put DA at the 4, please. Good Lord. In a different system, yes. Darth, or if you're trying to trade DA and you want to put him on a team that likes playing two bigs at once, like maybe the Lakers, great, wonderful. He probably could stay there, yes. But this is not that scheme. You guys haven't been watching this scheme if you guys think DA should be playing the 4 or anybody should be playing the 4. So when Monty Williams suggested in a presser Thursday, before the Suns game that night, that when we were talking about Jalen Smith having a great breakout week and what's he going to do now because he's got Bismack and JaVale and DeAndre all there, Monty suggested Jalen Smith might have to play the 4 to get on the floor the rest of the year. I don't get it. I don't get it. So says Jay, no one play the 4. You guys, this is not 1990s basketball. There is not the 4 position anymore. It's just a bunch of forwards ranging around the guards and then one big man in the middle. Even the Lakers gave up on the 2 bigs. They got LeBron playing the middle.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, you look at the Suns' success this season, their best run, their win streak was based off that 9-man rotation where they didn't even play a backup 4. It was just JaVale at center and then Crowder and Cam Johnson just taking the quote-unquote power forward minutes. To me, I think a 9-man rotation is all they need, and it's going to kind of push Bismack and even Jalen back into getting buried on the bench, which I think is a good thing because they're ready to go if like an emergency happens, foul trouble, injuries, COVID, whatever. Yeah, I think people get too caught up in what's happened recently. And as great as Bismack and Jalen have been, I just don't see minutes for them consistently with everyone back. I mean, obviously the conditioning and all that, and they'll probably get like a, reward for their good play and get some minutes like early on these next couple of games. But it's hard to see them being a consistent piece in the rotation just in terms of, the Suns trying to win games. And that's a good thing. I think having depth is important. But right now, their center depth is insane. So we'll get to that a little bit later about there's one creative way I think that stands out that they could open up a roster spot with those centers, but maybe even 2. But yeah, I'm with you. I think playing someone like a 2-center lineup is kind of in the Stone Age. There's no need to do that, especially when you have options like Crowder and Cam.
Look, and I don't want to make this about DA. It's about the Suns scheme. DA, yes, he is versatile. In the old school, when you have a 2-big lineup, he could have played power forward. I'm not saying he can't play power forward. I'm not saying he can't do that. But that is not the Suns scheme. Okay? What the Suns scheme is 1 big. So I'm not going to entertain. I don't even like the idea of Jalen Smith playing the 4 because he doesn't have the mobility. Now, if he can develop, if Jalen Smith with his development can stay in front of guys on the perimeter, defending on the perimeter, then great. Let's play him at the 4 because I would like some extra rebounding from one of the forwards because Jay and Cam and Mikal are terrible rebounders. They just are. There's a reason that DA is in the top 10 or top 7 in the league's centers top 7 in league's players on rebounding, and yet the Suns barely pull down half the rebounds and because Jay and Mikal and Cam don't rebound. I would love to have a better rebounder in there. And Jalen Smith can do that, but he's got to not compromise the rest of the defense. You can't just put a guy out there because he can put up 15 and 10 if he's giving up more points than he's scoring. Now, were the Suns pretty good in this stretch without DA, and did they look like they could handle Jalen Smith out there? Absolutely. But they also played some pretty banged up teams. Those teams were not not the greatest competition that the Suns have gone up against that past week, and so it was actually good timing with DA and JaVale. If they were going to miss a week, that was the week to miss. So I love Cameron Johnson as a shooter. He's just not that great of a rebounder. He's good at a defender. He's got the size to defend the pseudo bigger guys out there, but most teams don't play 2 bigs anymore either. But Jalen Smith could get out there, Jalen Smith could get out there against teams that are killing. Like, let's use the Cleveland Cavaliers, for example. They're the only team out there right now who are consistently playing multiple 7-footers at once, and they just happen to be there. They've got the formula. They've got the special formula going right now. They're a really, really good looking team. Jared Allen in the middle might be an all-star. Evan Mobley, certainly rookie of the year, I would think, as a 7-foot small forward who can do a little of everything because he's a swing forward. Evan Mobley would be perfect in this lineup. You might call it a too big. I would call it just Evan Mobley is so dang good that he can play anywhere. He plays like a small forward. He can also defend the rim. I would do that. They're an example where Jalen Smith might have to play, but against most teams, they don't play big power forwards. They just don't. So you got Crowder, Bridges, and Johnson as your forwards. The Suns could use a little more depth there. However, they've used all their roster spots. So I'm thinking they're going to have to do a trade to acquire instead of just use the buyout market anymore because they've used up their roster spots.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of interesting options that, you kind of need that can play multiple positions, like either a 2-3 or a 3-4 is probably ideal. I don't think they're going to be trading for a center anytime soon, just with their depth chart. They'll probably be looking to get off one of them. But yeah, I think what do you think the odds are that they actually make a trade here in the next few weeks?
It's interesting. James Jones has made a trade each year around the deadline since he became GM. He likes making little tinkering moves. However, it was only the first year that he made a move for a starting caliber guy. And last year, what he did is he made the move for Tory Craig, and it was a couple of weeks before the deadline. So the reason we're talking about Suns making changes right now is because that's when James Jones moves. He doesn't do it at the trade deadline. He does it before the trade deadline when it's all quiet and he just sneaks a guy through and gets a guy who can actually help out the team. So I really think if the Suns are going to make a move, it's going to be in the next few weeks, and it's going to be something that other teams did not expect to see. And we might actually, we talked to you and I, Zona, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what small moves could the guys make, the Suns make for buyouts or 10th, 11th guy kind of moves could they make by the trade deadline or whatever. And those are great. Those are great. And that may be the kind of move that happens. You talked about a Kenrich Williams from OKC, someone like that who makes low salary, low minutes on another team who would be okay with low salary, low minutes here with the Suns. And I think that's totally fine. But what we're going to talk about today is a little bit bigger, splashier moves. Should the Suns make a bigger move than just an 11th guy on the roster? What do you think? Should regardless of whether you think the Suns should make a trade, if they make a trade, should it be for somebody big?
I don't think it should be for someone big unless it makes too much sense for you not to do it. I know a lot of fans will point to we have the best record in the league. Why are we trying to make a move? We also have a lot of players that, in my opinion, are not playable in the playoffs and that haven't been great, on the back end of the roster that, it doesn't hurt to get better. That's the one thing. Looking at last year, they regretted not trading for JaVale McGee, right? So there's a lot of things that I think you have to take into consideration. You need to build your roster for the playoffs. And maybe you don't have to shake it up to where it's you're adding someone that's going to take shots away or opportunities away from your young core or have a huge role right away. But you need someone that could step in if someone goes down. So I think you have to get better. And anyone that says we should just stand pat, we have Elfrid Payton and Abdel Nader in our back of the bench. And you look at the center rotation is kind of a mess right now. So I think even Jones knows this roster is a little bit incomplete right now. So I think they will make a trade, and I think they should make a trade. I don't know if it's going to be a splash. I don't think it should be unless, like I said, it's too good to be true. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Let's just talk through it. So again, we've got minutes, like a Tory Craig kind of minutes, or maybe even bigger. But they've got definitely room for, in this scheme, a lot, some minutes available at a small forward or a big shooting guard, someone like that, who's a little bit bigger than Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Landry Shamet types, and fits more the mold of a Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson. But somebody who actually, in my opinion, who could be a better rebounder. Is that Jalen Smith? Maybe. But they'll probably trade Jalen Smith for somebody who's a little more proven because the Suns want to make the finals this year, and I'm not sure they trust Jalen Smith quite yet. Let's talk about Jalen Smith's tradability right now. So he makes he makes a little over $4.5 million this year, 4.4, 4.5, something like that. This year, he was scheduled to make 4.6, but the Suns declined that option next year. So the Suns and whoever has Jalen Smith on their team at the end of this season is only able to offer up to $4.6 million for next year for him to keep him. There's the problem. Okay. Jalen Smith is probably not worth $4.6 million. However, if you're a young rebuilding team and you've acquired him during the year, you might want the ability to pay him that to match another team's offer so you don't lose a guy. What if he plays out, right? Obviously, he's proven. Jalen Smith has proven this year that if you put him on a bad team or any team that's going to give him 25 minutes, he's going to give you a double-double close. Is that a winning double-double? We don't know yet. On a bad team, he's, whatever. But he's going to produce. And so that's going to look like a guy who should make more than $4.6 million next year. So why would a rebuilding team want to acquire Jalen Smith just to play him a bunch of minutes and then have him play himself out of your ability to pay? So that's what makes it hard to trade Jalen Smith this year to a bad team like the Thunder. Like a lot of teams, like Kenrich Williams, for example. The Thunder have Kenrich Williams. Would they want to acquire Jalen Smith just to have him outplay his salary demands? I mean, or his contract so somebody else makes him an offer? I don't think so. So I'm thinking that the Suns really need to trade with a team that's on the fence or is trying to somewhat contend, but also, mix and match their roster a little bit. And they'll take a Jalen Smith, knowing they won't play him much this year either, so that they can get him re-signed if they want to keep him long-term for future years. Because if you keep playing him the rest of the year, he's going to play himself out of that $4.6 million range.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. And I think the Suns just dug themselves in a hole in this situation. It's basically gotten to a point to where it's just a lose-lose. And like if they keep him, like you said, they're probably going to get outbid for him. But yeah, and if they deal him, then it's just like, why would a team trade for him when they could just pay him in the offseason, outbid the Suns? So it's just really tough to see anyone giving up any assets that, the Suns would want for him, even though his play is improved. So it's kind of like there is no win in this situation, but we'll see what Jones does. He's gotten creative in the past, so maybe in a combination of a deal, they can work something out.
So Herbie mentioned, welcome back, Herbie. Welcome to everybody. You all have made some great comments in the chat. We're going to get to them real quick, actually, probably right about now. I'd like to. So Herbie made a comment that he has a gut feel that Biyombo was picked up solely to be a tradable asset. I got to do some research. I don't think the Suns can do that. Certainly he can't. He has the right to veto any trade this year. It may be that they can't even trade him even if they wanted to. I got to check on that. But Biyombo, JaVale McGee, those guys are 1-year deals. Jalen Smith, we just talked about 1 year. Landry Shamet is potentially tradable. He's definitely tradable, but I mean, I don't know what his market is. Cameron Payne could certainly be traded, but then you got to find someone to fill that role. Elfrid Payton is also on a 1-year deal. Everybody on a 1-year deal has the right to veto any trade. They can just say, I don't want to be traded, because nobody wants to be put in an even worse situation than they might be in right now. So that's going to make it tough. Abdel Nader, he signed a 2-year deal. He actually has no control over whether he's traded or not. Dario Saric, injury exception. Frank Kaminsky has a 1-year deal. He can say no if he wants to, but neither of those two are playable. So Suns are kind of short on assets. When it comes to draft picks, the Suns don't have full rights to their draft pick because this year it's a conditional 2022 first round. They still owe OKC for Chris Paul if it's outside the lottery, which it almost certainly will be. So what the Suns could do is say next available, and everybody will agree that it's almost certainly 2024 first round pick, because you can't do 2 years in a row, and the Suns will definitely have to send a pick to New Orleans. So a 2024 first round pick is on the agenda, on the table, potential. Second round picks, they've got their second round picks. They could trade those. So the other thing is acquiring money. The other thing to consider is that the reason the Suns and I want to call you Ted Lubin. This is just my way of doing it. I'm not sure if that's your real name, but saying did the Suns not extend sticks to keep money off the books for Cam J and DA? Yeah, almost certainly. Here's the thing. The Suns are not going to acquire a player that has a lot of money on next year's contract unless they want that player to replace somebody who's already got money on next year. So Dario's got money on next year. Landry Shamet has got money on next year. Both are around 10 million. Okay. And Cameron Payne has about 6 million on next year. But none of the other guys have anything on next year. Jay Crowder has 9 million on next year as well. But Mikal, he's big money. Devin Booker, big money. Chris Paul, big money. DeAndre Ayton. The Suns really got to keep DeAndre Ayton. They're hoping they'll get him for less than max. They got Mikal for less than he could have gotten on an open market. They're hoping Cameron Johnson, because he's a restricted free agent, or because he's going to be a restricted free agent, he's 2 years away from getting big money anyway, would take something significantly less than Mikal Bridges did. They'd like to fit all those guys in. They're not going to take on big money. So one of the guys mentioned earlier on in this chat is Eric Gordon from the Rockets. The problem with Eric Gordon from the Rockets is he makes big money, and he makes big money next year too. Would you really rather have Eric Gordon than a combination of Landry Shamet and Jay Crowder? Probably not. So that's the thing is the Suns getting big contracts. Make sure when you want the Suns to acquire somebody, it's not for a lot of years, and it's not for several years, and it's not for big money unless they're sending money out. And they don't have a lot of money out unless people want to just absorb Dario's contract or take Landry Shamet's $10 million a year. He actually might be the most tradable asset on the roster right now. What do you think, Zona?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Eric Gordon makes a lot of sense basketball wise, but the contract does make it difficult. Like Dario, I think you'd have to trade Dario, one of Elfrid and Nader, and then probably Shamet as well, which, Dario and Shamet next year both, make a decent amount of money. So it's kind of a fair trade-off in that sense. But Gordon's first in NBA in 3-point shooting this year. Second is Cam Johnson. So it'd be pretty cool to have two of the top shooters in the league. But yeah, outside of that, I think someone more like Justin Holiday or over in Indiana, Tory Craig, Kenrich Williams. Those are the more realistic guys that have a salary that fits and a role that would fit. So, I think just adding, like I said before, just a multi-position player that can step in and kind of fill the Nader / Peyton role that they have right now, where they kind of need them from time to time. That should be the main agenda to check off, and also clearing up the center rotation. They could waive Frank. That could be something we'll talk about a little bit later.
That's true.
And then obviously Jalen Smith, I think at this point trading him seems more likely than not. But again, it's just kind of a lose-lose with how well he's played, which is weird to say, but it's kind of there's no way they come out of that situation feeling good, I feel like. But yeah, in the short term, I think they definitely need to make a move. And so who are some names that you'd like them to target outside of the guys that I just mentioned?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is what I decided to do is look at the rest of the league on teams who might be wanting to make some moves. So you mentioned the play-in game. There's up to 10 teams in each, or probably 12 teams in each conference who are still going to be playing for that potential for the playoffs. And so that makes it less likely that middling teams are going to make sell-off trades. Okay. They might make swap good player for good player trades, but they're unlikely to make sell-off trades. For example, Atlanta is having a really tough beginning of the year. They're looking not very good. Their GM is calling them out on public radio. Not public radio, but on radio, privately owned. He's calling them out for not trying hard enough, and he brought everybody back. He's like, I probably shouldn't have brought everybody back. They have too many guys, and a lot of them would look good on the Suns, right? Well, I think Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, those would be good acquisitions for the Suns. The problem with those guys is they're going to be extension eligible real soon, just like Cam Johnson and DA. So you can't be acquiring somebody who's going to want 15, 20 million, another one who's going to want that. So it's probably going to be a veteran. And those guys, they want to consolidate their extra pieces for a bigger prize. And the Suns are not going to sell off a bigger prize. So take off teams like the Hawks. The ones and then take off OKC, because OKC is not going to want Jalen Smith because, like I said, they're not going to want to be stuck not being able to give him a new contract, and some other team can just easily pluck him away and they got nothing out of it. So I don't think OKC, unless they have no better offers out there. So I'm looking at someone like Portland or Sacramento or New Orleans. So those are the three teams I was looking at first. Portland, we talked about this a little while ago, but man, the things have just gotten worse and worse and worse for Portland, haven't they? So Robert Covington makes $13 million this year, and he becomes a free agent this summer. That's a perfect acquisition for James Jones. Absolutely perfect. Kind of like Tory Craig, except supersized from a year ago, because the Suns can decide this summer whether to keep him or not, or whether they need that money, that space for the Cam Johnson extension a year later and DA bringing him back. And whether, if Robert Covington doesn't work out, then you just quietly move on. So Robert Covington would be an absolute perfect. He's 6'9". He doesn't rebound that well either, but the Suns are used to it. I kind of wish they'd get a better rebounder, but he might be the absolute perfect fit. Portland is trying to get rid of guys. And they might convince themselves, they're not very well run, they might convince themselves that Jalen Smith is worth a flyer behind Jusuf Nurkic, so that Smith can show promise for next year, but not outplay his salary potential for next year. That's possible. They'll do that. They might do that. And if the Suns throw in a 2024 first round pick, that'll make them feel better. Is Robert Covington worth 2024 first round pick? They gave up multiple first round picks to get him. But what do you think? What do you think of that option, Zona?
Yeah, I like the Covington idea. I think he's kind of lost a step. He's not as good as he used to be, but he's also in a bad situation. Like you said, in Portland, it's a mess. And I think coming to a system in Phoenix would just bring out the best in him. And that's kind of the idea of trading for anyone at this point. I think, as you alluded to earlier, just the culture they've built here in Phoenix, it's just going to make it a lot easier for guys to look better than they actually are, or at least like realize their max potential. So I think Covington would be awesome. I'm not sure what Portland would want, but it looks like that's a team on the verge of blowing things up. So that's definitely someone to keep an eye out for. Larry Nance Jr., I think, is less likely. Yeah. Guys like him and Thad Young, just because they can't shoot, and they added Biyombo. So I think at this point, you're looking more at like a stretch four that can add some toughness, rebounding, and three-point shooting is probably the most likely option. But adding another shot creator.
Yeah, if you're going to actually, right. Sorry to interrupt you, but I love the Larry Nance thing, so I didn't want to lose that thought. So when you're done, let me talk about Larry Nance for a second.
Oh, no, that was just pretty much it. I was just going to say adding a four that can stretch the floor and play defense is probably the top on their list. If not, could also see adding like another guard creator if they're not in on Shamit and maybe want to explore some other options for, someone that can create their own shot. That could be another option, but it seems like for the most part, it's going to probably be another Tory Craig type trade.
Yeah, Larry Nance Jr. People have been talking about Larry Nance Jr. for a while. He seemed like a great fit for some reason, and I'm one of them. We've thought Larry Nance Jr. might be a great fit. However, he's not at all. The problem with Larry Nance Jr. is he's played best as a small ball five. Even though he's only 6'7", he's 245 pounds. He's got a little bit of rim protection in him. And he plays best like that, where he can switch out. Like, he's a great small ball five where he can switch out on the perimeter and defend people and everything. But the Suns need a guy who can make some threes. For his career, he's a 33% three-point shooter. This year, he's 30%. He's not really a shooter. as much as we all want him to be a shooter, he's not really takes the shots, but he's only taking 1.7 threes a game this year. 3.3 a year ago was his career high by far in Cleveland. But he's really not a 3-point shooter. So he's actually not that great a fit on the Suns, even though you would think that he'd be a great fit on the Suns. He's just not. So there's my big jump is Robert Covington. Do you have any other names on your list that you'd like to acquire?
Yeah, I think Terrence Ross is an interesting name in Orlando. He's starting to play a little bit better, and he's someone that can he's instant offense off the bench, which I think could help a bench unit that at times has struggled to score consistently. So I think that's one name. And Orlando's going to, they're a young team. They're pretty awful, so they're going to be probably looking to get rid of like all their veterans. And I also have a question. Do you think they should trade for a third string point guard, someone like a Corey Joseph or Ish Smith, to take the Elfrid Payton minutes?
Elfrid Payton was only signed for a 1 year minimum deal. So the Suns could easily release Elfrid Payton if they had somebody else to take those minutes. And another team might trade for him because he's actually started in the league. I mean, he's been a starter. I don't aesthetically like his game. I don't love what he's done. Monty Williams did talk about him the other day too, about how he's had to adjust playing more off ball this year because the Suns have ball handlers between Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Cam Payne. Cam Payne has a huge high usage rate. I wish that would go down a little bit. He's become a little bit less valuable every minute for all the minutes he's on the court this year because they're very myopic on getting shots, which leaves Elfrid Payton to either not play at all or play off ball. And Monty says he's made great adjustments at playing off ball and being a third option. So even when he's on the court, a third option to touch the ball. So it's been an adjustment for him. Suns acquiring somebody else to be that third point guard, sure, as long as it doesn't cost any assets, as long as it's like a Tory Craig, where you just pick him up for cash, pick him up for a future second round pick that's top 58 protected, something like that, which actually might end up going over, thank God, because the Suns are so good. So you do something like that to acquire a third point guard, but nothing that gives up assets. And then if you feel like it, just letting Elfrid Payton go, that's the only way I would replace Elfrid Payton is with yet another guy like that. Now, everyone would love to see a young 22-year-old ball handler who could eventually take over, but that's not going to be available this year. And the Suns and James Jones is not going to focus on that kind of guy right now in a finals run. Off season, sure, but not right now. So I don't see them trying to get younger at the trade deadline for sure, unless it just happens to be. So that's interesting. Let's see. I've got another team I was looking at, which is the Sacramento Kings. I have a question for you, Zona. Harrison Barnes would fit this team stylistically. But do you think Harrison Barnes, if for his $27 million a year, is worth the trying to cobble together some, if the Kings want Jalen Smith, I don't know. Let's just assume they want Jalen Smith. If the Kings want Jalen Smith and Dario, would you want to invest $20 million a year or so in Harrison Barnes?
I probably wouldn't. Just looking at Cam's improvement, and obviously Jay Crowder's importance to this team is just kind of like it just seems like there's not enough minutes for him really consistently, and the salary as well. If you asked me earlier in the season, I would have probably been more open to it. Harrison Barnes is really good, and I think he's one of the few really good players on the Kings. So, and they're still in playoff contention for that play-in spot. So it has to be something that I think makes them competitive. So they probably want Jay Crowder back in a trade like that for salary purposes as well. So I would have to lean no on that one, but Barnes is a solid player, and he's someone that I think would fit the Suns. It's just a matter of, there's only so many minutes, and I think what they have in place right now, you don't want to blow it up just for Harrison Barnes, Okay,
there's a couple of comments in the chat that I want to address here. I'll trade Nader for anyone. No one wants Nader. Sorry, guys. Can we trade? And the reason for that is he hasn't played at all, and he's not healthy, and so he's not going to play for anybody. So no one wants him, even if he was playing his best basketball. Can we trade Crowder? Yes, but I think the chances of the Suns trading Jay Crowder is like a minus 5,000%. He is the glue for this team. He is the guy that everybody looks to for, I mean, besides Chris Paul, but he is the guy here that everyone loves. And he makes the defense better. He makes the offense better. He makes everything better, even though he doesn't put up all the stats. So the Suns are going to keep Crowder. And he doesn't play well coming off the bench, although he could learn. Obviously, if the Suns acquire somebody who deserves to start ahead of him, great. But we need him on the Suns. There's a couple of comments of how about De'Aaron Fox? That would be a huge change. Acquiring De'Aaron Fox, will he be available? Possibly, because there's such weird things going on in Sacramento. And now all of a sudden people seem to think Tyrese Halliburton might be a better point guard option than De'Aaron Fox. I'm not sure how that's even possible, but let's say De'Aaron Fox becomes available. The Suns would not trade for him mid-season this year because they're already the best team in the NBA, and you don't shake up the roster to do that. The dude makes $25 million. He's one of those max guys, so 25, 28 million a year. You'd have to trade a ton to get him, or a really good player to get him. So maybe in a big offseason move, like so says Jay says, sure, but not during the year. That's not going to happen. Gente Murray, somebody else commented on. Zona, do you want to talk about Gente at all?
Yeah, I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. They don't have the assets to trade for him. I think there's a lot of other teams that could outbid the Suns just in terms of what the Suns would actually trade. But as far as a free agent target in the future, that's someone that I think would be an awesome fit as a CP replacement. He's putting up huge numbers in San Antonio, and he's kind of their one key piece there that they're trying to build around. So I don't see them letting him go. So it's kind of names like that and Sabonis and Fox, like they're names, but they're not realistic. I think what we're going to see is just more like on the edges.
Yeah. Hello clarified. He wasn't talking about this year. Definitely for Gente Murray.
Long term, yeah.
That long term. Look. In 2 consecutive off seasons, James Jones acquired Ricky Rubio for a $17 million a year at his peak kind of contract, and then Chris Paul. So I definitely think James Jones, we don't have to worry about James Jones getting a Chris Paul replacement at some point. It just doesn't need to be mid-season in the middle of your finals runs with Chris Paul. I don't see them doing that kind of move unless it just falls in their lap. And somebody like De'Aaron Fox and Gente Murray, they don't just fall in your lap. You got to do a lot of heaven and earth moving to get that to happen. Let's see who else. Shamet again. I want to go back to Landry Shamet. The poor guy has been traded 3 times in his career, and he might be traded a 4th time. Maybe this is the Suns are his 4th team. He might be traded again. He's definitely tradable. He's only got 2 years of that $10 million a year contract guarantee going forward. So a team will see a little bit of ownership on the contract, and they might acquire him to keep him, hopefully long-term for him. I think as JA says, his shooting could turn around for the playoffs, whereas campaign could hurt the Suns. The problem was campaign was pretty darn good in last year's playoffs, and I can only hope that he can reprise that role. And Landry Shamet has played himself out of team's rotation by playoff time throughout his career so far. It's only been a 3-year career. He's not old, but there's no guarantee he's going to play well. So while I would tend to agree with you, JA, I probably think it's the opposite, and Monty's going to trust more on campaign than he is Landry, although Landry will still play. Trade Sticks for Tory Craig straight up. That'd be interesting. Tory Craig now playing for Indiana. He actually had a 28-point, 11-rebound performance early in the year. Do you have any idea, Zona, what Tory Craig is putting up this year for Indiana year-long?
I would say, obviously, he started off pretty hot, but it's probably, regressed back to the mean, just like somewhere around his career numbers. I haven't checked in a while, but I'm sure it's probably nothing too too crazy.
So Indiana is 10 games under 500. They've had a really bad year. Tory Craig has been healthy, and he's actually scoring only 5.5 points per game. And he's getting only 16 minutes a game, which is right in line with his career. His most prolific period of his entire career, his most scoring-wise prolific part of his career was with the Suns last year. And he's gone back down. Would he be a great addition? Absolutely. Would you trade Jalen Smith for? Absolutely. I would trade Jalen Smith for Tory Craig, because knowing that Indiana has to deal with that 1 year out contract where you can only offer him $4.6 million. But Indiana might be willing to roll those dice because they've got to look for somebody when they split up Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. So, I guess Jalen Rose, or was it Jalen Rose who suggested maybe the Suns would trade DA for Domantas Sabonis? What do you think of that trade?
No comment. Jalen Rose says a lot of things. Just idiotic.
Yeah. We don't need to give that too much airtime.
Yeah.
We don't need to give that too much airtime, but Jalen Rose suggesting the Suns would do better with Domantas Sabonis than Ayton, I think is ridiculous, because Ayton's biggest value is on defense, and he picks up the easy stuff on offense. Like you guys are excited about Bismack and Jalen and JaVale doing so well in the center role. Yes, the center role offensively is clean and easy. It's tailored and all that. But defensively, DA is by far the best option out there for the Suns, because with both the perimeter defense and the rim defense, and Domantas Sabonis offers neither of those two things. He gets you rebounds. He's a great passer. Domantas Sabonis is like Super Frank in some ways. And I know Sabonis fans will hate me for that, and they'll say I'm an idiot. But if you're talking about player profile, Sabonis plays more like a Frank than he does a DA. And I prefer a DA type is all I'm saying. Sabonis is like Frank times 1,000, but still, that's the thing. In fact, I'd rather keep Jalen Smith in the rotation than screw all that up. But that's funny. Tory Craig for Jalen Smith, I would probably do that. Any other names that you were thinking of?
Indiana, I think, has a lot of them, just between Craig. Justin Holiday is another name, kind of a guard/wing that can really shoot and defend. O'Shea Brissett as well. So I think he's just like a bigger forward that kind of plays the same Tory Craig role. So I think Indiana is going to make a lot of moves. Maybe not Sabonis or Turner yet, but they have a lot of useful players. I think they're going to try to ship out. So
if the Suns could offload a next year contract, Justin Holiday would be just as good an acquisition as Tory Craig, and he's under contract for next year, whereas Tory Craig's is a team option.
Yeah.
He signed a 2-year, $10 million.
Kenrich Williams are probably my top two, just in terms of their role and contract going into next year. They're both under control for a reasonable price, and they could fill exactly what they need to.
Question for you. If you could keep Miles Turner for several years at around 18-20 million or somewhere even possibly less than that, would you rather have him? He's only 25 years old still, by the way. Would you rather have him than DA?
No, I think Ayton's still not even close to his prime yet. And, I think whenever you try to get too cute and, save money here for a play like player X or player B, like usually, Turner's a good player. He's solid. But I think when you do that, you're getting slightly worse and kind of capping yourself. We don't know what Ayton's going to be by the time he's 25, 26. So I think the Suns' core right now, they need to do everything they can in their power to keep both Ayton and Cam Johnson. I think there's certain centers that are replaceable. Like I would say outside of like the top, 6 or 7 guys in the league, you can find players to take their spots pretty easily. But once you get that to that high end, especially high upside in the playoffs, it's important to have, those top tier centers. So I think the Suns just need to keep their core 4, build around that post CP3 and go from there. So
says Jay asks, is that a real question? What the fuck, Dave? Yeah, no, it was just a question. I don't want to do that. And what the thing is, when people say that DA could be replaced by somebody long term for less money, sure, but the player would only be half the value of DA or 75% of the value of DA. And if you want to win finals, you need someone like DA. Now, another person in the chat mentioned Pascal Siakam. I mean, that is my long term joy acquisition. Pascal Siakam as a 4, yeah, he's like 6'9". He could play the Suns 4. And he's not as much of a 3-point shooter, but he'd be great as a Sean Marion-ish type of guy. I would love to see Pascal Siakam, but the problem with him is he's also somebody in the 20 millions range for several years. And so do you want Siakam so bad you're willing to give up one of DA or Cam Johnson? Maybe you'd give up Cam Johnson for Pascal Siakam long term, but certainly not giving up the possibility of re-signing DA, because Siakam's already going to put you way over with Devin Booker and Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges already making next year 20 plus million, or Mikal, I think he's 18 million or something, but still, that's the rub on Siakam, is he's already getting that big contract, and you'd have to give up one of the Suns' core guys. And as Zona says, wouldn't we rather just keep the guys we know can carry a team to a finals than acquire guys who might? Now, Siakam has helped carry a team to a finals too, but we already know in this group, in this team, that the guys on hand can do that and have done it and are continuing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Siakam would be an interesting name, like long-term post CP3, because what they will need, like going forward, is like another scorer that you can kind of get the ball to and just get a bucket. But that's a conversation for, I think, down the road. Hopefully Chris Paul still has a lot of good basketball left, and we don't have to worry about that for a while. Yeah, do you want to move on to the true or false section now?
Yep, we're already almost an hour in. Yep. So let's move on to true or false. Focus this back on the Suns. We'll continue to take your comments and talk about them, but go ahead. True or false?
All right. Number one, diving back into Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson will make more than $16 million per year in his extension this offseason.
So I'm going to say, wow, this is tough because, first of all, I don't know that the Suns will actually do the extension for Cam this offseason unless he takes less than that. So if he's asking for more than that, the Suns are going to do what they did with DA, and they're going to say, no, thank you. The only reason Mikal actually got his extension was because he was willing to accept less than the market was probably going to bear. And so to lock him up now, they didn't have to worry about some other team making a bigger offer for him. And how it's turned out actually is Mikal has had a slightly worse season this year, and so he might not have gotten a bigger offer, but that was what was on the table at the time. Cam, if his reps want more than 16 million, the Suns are not going to do an extension. So I'm going to say false. What do you say, Zona?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really close to that number. That's why I picked it. I think that's the tough part. He's going to be right around Mikal's number, where it's like, what is he, like 18-ish? Probably a little bit less, just because, you know, Mikal's defense is super valuable, and he had an awesome season last year. But I'm going to go true, and I'm going to say he's going to make about, right over 16, 17 million per year. But it's going to be very close. I think that's kind of where he's built his play up to. So we'll just have to wait and see. And like you said, it doesn't have to be this offseason. They still have one more cheap year of Cam Johnson after this, and they could do the same thing they did with DA, where they just say, we're just going to let you hit restricted free agency and go from there. So nothing to panic about yet, but he's playing his way to a pretty big payday for sure. Yeah.
So I think the easy answer is not if it's more than 16 million. If he agrees to 4 years, 60, which is 15, I think the Suns would do that. Okay. Your next one, I think we already talked through the next one, but you want to jump to the Frank one?
Yeah, let's do that. This isn't something I've seen floated around a little bit, just as like a gentleman's agreement type thing where, they can maybe have a deal in the future with him, but like they already have in the past. But true or false, Phoenix will waive Frank Kaminsky to create another roster spot.
I think if the Suns need a roster spot, they would do it. But that would only be as a prelude to the need for that roster spot in a deal, or to acquire somebody who did get bought out and now they've used their last roster spot for Bismack. And if someone interesting gets bought out and or whatever is available and looks like they could fill in that one of those forward roles like a Tory Craig or better, I think they would easily, because Frank's guaranteed his money. So he's still making his money. If he's not going to play much this year, he won't mind it either. And he already came back to the Suns once. That doesn't even mean Frank would leave the Suns. That would just mean he takes the rest of the year off, cheers from the stands instead of the sidelines, and comes back next year on a minimum deal. So I think that would be the first thing the Suns would do to create a roster spot for sure. Even before Alfred.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to, they're going to obviously have to get rid of one of their centers, whether it's Jalen Smith in a trade, or using Dario's injured player exception, or cutting Frank. So I think one of those things is going to happen. Cutting Frank's probably the cleanest. So I think I'm going to go true on this one, but it wouldn't shock me if they found a more creative way to, dance around that.
Yep.
All right.
Next one.
Number 4, going to Dario. His status has been kind of up in the air. We don't know a lot, but true or false, Dario Saric will play in a game for the Suns sometime this season, playoffs included.
I don't know if the signing of Bismack was just a perfect opportunity thing here, or if the Suns are doing it strategically. They already brought in JaVale for the year. Now they have Bismack for the year. Bringing back Dario, and they don't play two bigs, like I said before. Dario does not fit as a 4 in this team because he certainly doesn't have the wheels to defend sideline, out on the perimeter. The Suns must be expecting him not to play. That's my guess. My guess is they're expecting him not to play. If he becomes healthy, they would definitely have him on the roster for a break in case of emergency, and everybody gets injured and they need him. Then that would be wonderful. Seeing Dario score 15 points and grab 8 rebounds in a game where all of a sudden a bunch of guys are out with COVID again or something like that. So sure, I can see that. But I feel like them committing to Bismack for the rest of the year is them saying not only is Frank not going to play, but probably Dario. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading the tea leaves too much. What do you think, Zona?
I'm going to say true. I just have a weird feeling he's going to come back sooner than expected. Maybe it'll be the very end of the season. Maybe it'll be like just getting garbage minutes in the first round of the playoffs if they're blowing a team out or something. But I think we'll see him for at least a few minutes at some point. But there's also a chance, like you said, they have so much depth at center that there's no rush. So I could easily see them just saying, let's just, pack it up, get ready for next year. Don't want to, get him back too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, what's your last one?
All right. And the last one, true or false, Cam Johnson will finish higher in points per game than Mikal Bridges by the end of the season. Right now, Cam's at 11.9 and Mikal's at 12.2.
Yeah, this is interesting because Mikal is definitely taking a gap year on his scoring, I think, this year. He just doesn't look like he's really interested in being a primary scorer. The Suns kind of put it in his head that he should be looking at new ways to score, mid-range and things like that. And he's definitely working on that. But he is never going to be a guy who tries to get the ball first, tries to take the shot as soon as he catches. I think Mikal's 12.2 points per game are going to stay there. I really do think so. I think, but the problem is your question is, will Cam finish higher? Because he's only 0.3 points behind right now. Cam's only up to that because Jay's been out. And I think Jay's had a tough year to start offensively. Mm-hmm. I really think they're both going to finish right around the same. The question is, will Cam finish higher? Possibly, because Cam is going into this, I'm going to score when I get the ball mode. And he's doing so dang good at it. Whereas Mikal is, I can do everything but score and be a difference maker. And he's so dang good at that. So I'm kind of coming around on this. And I do think maybe, let me say true. Cam is going to finish. What do you guys say in the chat? But I think Cam is going to finish with more points per game, but they're both going to be around 12.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think obviously Crowder being out and, all this opportunity that's opened up for him and Booker being out before that, there's been a great chance for Cam and he's taken advantage of it. So I think Mikel's also kind of in a slump a little bit while Cam's just been, on a rampage and it's pretty close. So I think I'm going to go true, but they're both going to be in that 12, 12 and a half points per game range. And it'll kind of balance out throughout the year. So I'm going to go true, but it's going to be by like 0.1, 0.2, maybe 0.3 points at the most.
Yeah, it's going to stay real close. The Suns have 7 different players averaging 10 plus points per game. So you can only do that if you don't have vacuums on offense and everybody is sharing the ball. And it's as Monty says, their kind of mantra this year is the "we score" mantra. They actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players. 8 players, although they're not all playing at the same time. So that's part of it. But in any given game, the Suns will have 7 players in double figures. And that just means no one's going to be eating the ball too much. So, and one of those players not scoring 10 points a game is Jay Crowder, and he will at some point. He's at 9.3. So I really think that they'll both finish around 12. I do think probably the way their mentality is this year, that Cam will probably finish higher than Mikel. All right, a couple more comments in the chat that I want to touch base on because we got to update our early season. We were thinking, get Thad Young on the Suns or wait for a Kevin Love buyout. I don't see either of those happening anymore. Thad Young is not even playing for the Spurs even after all this time. It's possible he'll get a buyout and come in, but you know what Thad Young would have been? A great small ball 5. And the Suns are now flush at 5. Is he a good defender in the open space on the perimeter for playing one of the forward roles? Sure, but he can't stretch the floor at all. You guys have seen a couple of games against the Spurs this year, and Thad Young does not have a good-looking outside shot. So I don't see them going after Thad Young anymore unless he basically comes free. Maybe if he becomes kind of like Bismack.
Him and Larry Nance, like those are 2 names I've been talking about for so long. I think those names are dead at this point with the Suns. It's just tough to see them bringing in a center. I think it's going to be a forward that can shoot, and that's what they need. So rest in peace to the Thad Young trade talks.
Yeah. And also Kevin Young being bought out. No, Cleveland is one of the best teams in the East, and Kevin Young is one of the big reasons, Kevin Love is one of the big reasons for that because, and he actually might get more consideration for 6th man of the year than he does for a buyout. So no, he's happy. He's healthy. He's playing well. He's playing better than he has in years. He still would not be a great fit for the Suns because he doesn't have a lot of mobility on the perimeter for switching and all that. And again, he would have been a good small ball 5, but Suns don't need 5s. So I don't see that happening at all anymore. So strike all those guys who were good small ball 5s off your list and focus on guys who can make a 3 ball and play scrappy perimeter defense, a la Tory Craig or somebody a little bit better than that. Robert Covington is probably my top target, contract wise, skills wise, and probably availability all rank up there. So that's the guy I think we should be thinking about. Any other comments on free agency, or not free agency, but trade deadline or anything right now?
Yeah, it's just funny how fast things can change in a year. Like you said, with Kevin Love, that was we all expected him just to be that fallback buyout option that, him and James Jones are close. Suns could just swoop him up. Now it doesn't make sense for either teams. The Cavs are great, and they're going to be looking to be a buyer, not a seller. And it's funny how the Spurs, they're probably kicking themselves if there was an offer for Jalen Smith for Thad Young at this point. I don't think the Suns would even, consider doing that. So, yeah, I think for the most part, we're just going to see, like you said, just adding a tough, hard-nosed defender that can, space the floor, fit the system seamlessly, and just look a lot better than whatever current situation they're in. So I think, it's just looking at how Bismack looked already, there's a lot to be excited about them adding, a competent role player, because I think it's going to make them bring out the best of them, just like they did Tory Craig last year. So excited to see what James Jones does.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world for James Jones, his mistake of not guaranteeing year 3 for Jalen Smith can work in his favor. In a perfect world for James Jones, Jalen Smith now fades again into obscurity. He's available in the summer. And the Suns say, you know what, we love you and we want to bring you back. And he re-signs for, a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract or whatever it is, a longer-term contract for about JaVale McGee money. And he ends up in the JaVale McGee type role backing up Ayton. I think that would be ideal. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think that'll be ideal. For those who joined late, because our people who are on the show right now weren't all there early when I talked about Robert Covington. Robert Covington is on a $12 million 1-year contract. He's expiring this summer, so he doesn't have any money that you have to worry about for next year if he doesn't work out perfectly with the team. And he's on a Portland team that's struggling and needs to change things out. And because it's only $12 million, you could do a quick package of a Jalen Smith and Dario for that or something. So I think availability, acquirability, and fit with the Suns, because he is a kind of stretch, although he doesn't make a ton of threes, but he shoots them kind of like Jay Crowder. And he can play really good help defense and space defense and all that. So I think that could be a really good target for the Suns for this year.
And as someone pointed out in the chat, I think, we've listed all these names, and James Jones he's going to make a trade. It's going to be for none of them. It's going to be something we just don't see coming, just like per usual. So
like Thad Young, like Kelly Oubre a couple of years ago, like Tyler Johnson. He's going to do something like that. We're not going to have any idea. In fact, the fact that he got Justin Jackson, who just might turn out to be better than Abdel Nader, and then somebody mentioned, can you release Abdel Nader and keep Justin Jackson? Sure, if Justin Jackson plays well and Nader stays hurt. Nader's also guaranteed this year. You could release him. But Monty loves Abdel Nader, and I hope someday you find someone to love as much as Monty loves Abdel Nader. So I'm not sure if they're going to let Dooley go. But Justin Jackson might turn out to be a really nice off-the-street signing, and Bismack is already a nice off-the-street signing. So we'll see. But, yes, James Jones is probably going to do something none of us expected. We're all going to hate it, or at least shrug when it first happens. And then when it comes to playoff time, we're going to be like, oh, good job. That's how it's going to go. Okay. Let's preview the coming week with the Suns, because we're going to get out of here pretty quickly. You guys have already been here almost an hour 15. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the next upcoming week of games. The Suns host the Heat tonight, Saturday night, and all the guys not all the guys, but the 3 big rotation players are back. DeAndre Ayton, JaVale McGee, and Jay Crowder, which means you're going to see a little bit less of Cam Johnson again. You're not going to see Jalen Smith at all. You might, if you see Bismack Biyombo, it's only because one of those guys got into foul trouble ahead of him. The Suns might have a little bit of a stumble bringing 3 rotation players back all at once who haven't played in 2 weeks. So I'm a little worried about that game, but I still think the Suns win it because Jimmy Butler is out again for an ankle issue. So I don't think Jimmy Butler's playing, but I don't know. We'll find out later today what the injury report is. And then the next 2 games during the week are at the Toronto Raptors, who have been playing really well lately. They do that 5-man 6'8" lineup that is going to be tough for the Suns because they're going to switch everything. That's going to be the tough for the Suns to score on. They don't like those are the kind of lineups the Suns have the most trouble with. And then they play at the Pacers, and that should be a win. So what do you predict the Suns are going to do in the next week, Zona?
So last week I predicted 1-2, just to reverse jinx it, and they went 3-0. So you're welcome, Suns fans, for being negative for once. I'm going to go 2-1. I think they'll take care of Miami tonight. They'll beat Indiana, but that Toronto game is the one that's going to be tough. Like you said, they struggle against teams that can switch like that are versatile. They're almost like the Clippers of the East in a way, with just how many, like the full strength.
The best of the Clippers. Yeah.
So that could be a tough one, but I think 2-1 is realistic, and hopefully they can keep the win streak going, go 3-0, but that's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, the Heat also are going to be without Bam. He had surgery on his thumb, so they're missing a lot of guys. So while the Heat are 24-15 and they're 4th in the East, they have so many guys missing that it's going to be the Suns should be able to win that. So I'm going to say they're going to go 2-1 this week. So And at that point, the Suns will be exactly 41 games in it. So we'll do a halfway point show next week. Before you guys go, I want to play a quick video. Darth Voida made this video for me to advertise something that's really important to me that I do every year. So as we fade out here, I'm going to play a quick video for you guys before the end of the show, and I hope you guys will hit the link or use the link to help out first responders and healthcare heroes. Please just stay a couple of more minutes and watch this video, and let me know if you cannot hear it. I think you're going to be able to hear it, but if you cannot, then I'll talk through it. One more minute of your time. Being at a basketball game is such a rush. Screaming at the top of your lungs, high-fiving the person next to you, enjoying that last shot by the Suns. There's no better feeling than that instant camaraderie you get with thousands of other Suns fans at a stadium. We at BrightSideOfTheSun.com and the Solar Panel Podcast are proud to give that game time experience to new fans every year. We call it Brightside Night. We donate game tickets to targeted groups around the Valley who've never had a live game experience. Over the past 5 years, that's been underprivileged kids. We've sent over 10,000. This year, we're focusing on healthcare heroes and first responders who've put their lives on the line to save others. Now, we want to give back to them. Let's thank them with tickets to the February 16th Suns-Rockets game. All it costs you is $11. What you get out of it is not only the satisfaction of helping somebody, but also of getting something for yourself. You're either in a raffle at the very least, or you get gifts, you get goods, you get tickets, whatever it is. You make a donation, you also get something out of it. Go to suns.com/brightside. That's suns.com/brightside. Brightside's one word. Make your donation now. It only takes a couple of minutes and you're not even going to miss the money. That's one of the proudest accomplishments of my life to do this, and I hope it's going to be one of yours too. That's contributing to Brightside Night is a huge deal. That's suns.com/brightside. All right, I'm putting it in the chat for you guys, so you can just click on that or paste in whatever. You can paste
do it. If you guys do it, the Suns are guaranteed a championship this year. Guaranteed.
Ho! Hey, you heard it here first. Of course, we can't prove it until after you've already done it, but go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sure that's going to be the case. So thank you so much for staying here and watching us during this trade. We're kicking off the trade season. We're going to be talking about trades a lot this month, so make sure you reserve your Saturday mornings for us or watch it later. Thank you so much, Darth Voida, for making that video, and thank you in advance for making your donation to Brightside Night. You're going to send healthcare heroes and first responders to the game on February 16th. It's going to be wonderful. And I'm thinking we're going to send 3,000 or 4,000 of these guys to the game. So thank you so much in advance for your time. For my part, I'm Dave King, NBA on Twitter. And you can find me at brightsideofthesun.com as well as this podcast. Zona, tell us where we can find you in between these shows.
Shout out to everyone in the chat for making this a fun show. You can follow me on Twitter at ZonaHoops_. On zonahoops.com, we just released an article breaking down some potential trades. So go check that out. And I'll have more for Brightside of the Sun as well, hitting on some targets. And if they do when they do make a trade, I'll do a deep dive scouting report on whoever that may be over there. So check that out.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ballers, for being there in the chat with us every single week. And thank you again for anybody who's watching this later or listening on the podcast. Thank you for your time. We'll talk to you again soon. I'm Dave. That's Zona.